Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your voice didn't matter? Like no matter how much you explained, justified, pleaded, it only fed the monster more? What if I told you the most powerful move you could ever make is silence? Yes, silence, not weakness, not surrender, but a calm, focused, strategic silence that breaks the narcissist from the inside out. Because narcissists don't feed on truth. They feed on reaction. And when you starve them of that, you take their power. Let me show you how silence becomes your greatest roar. When you're dealing with a narcissist, someone manipulative, controlling, always twisting the truth, you start to believe that fighting harder is the answer. You get caught in the trap, explaining, defending, trying to fix the unfixable, but here's the truth. Narcissists don't want peace. They want control. They want to see you hurt, confused, destabilized, because your emotional reaction is their validation. They gaslight, they lie, they charm, they rage, and every time you respond with your energy, whether it's anger, sadness, guilt, even love, they WIN. Now here's where the silent move changes everything. Silence is not passivity. Silence is not weakness. Silence is you stepping into your power, because when you go silent, not in fear, but in conscious disengagement, you remove the very oxygen they breathe. You stop defending your truth. You stop explaining your worth. You stop performing for their approval, and what happens next? They panic. They rage harder. They text more. They push boundaries because they are losing grip. Not just of you, but of the identity they created through you. And here's what most people don't realize. Your silence is a message. It says, I don't need to prove anything to you. It says, I've reclaimed my space and you no longer exist in it. It says, you don't control me. I control me. That's when the narcissist starts to crumble, because now they're exposed. The game no longer works, and they're stuck looking in the mirror they can't escape. You want to know the scariest thing to a narcissist? It's not confrontation. It's not boundaries. It's not calling them out. It's indifference. It's when they realize they no longer live in your head, that you no longer seek their approval, that your peace matters more than their chaos. So when you get quiet, not in defeat but in power, you destroy the very illusion they lived in. That's why your silence isn't empty. It's full of clarity. It's full of healing. It's full of new decisions. It's full of you coming back to life. This is your moment. This is where you rise, not with rage, not with revenge, but with powerful silence. This is where the game ends and your life begins, so make the move. The silent move, not to punish them, but to free yourself, because the moment you stop dancing with their chaos, you start creating your own peace, and that is the move that destroys every narcissist and rebuilds the real you. Let's go. Narcissists thrive on attention. It's their lifeblood. They crave it the way a drowning person craves air. Whether it's positive or negative, they don't care. Praise, admiration, arguments, tears, it's all the same to them. It feeds their ego and reinforces their false sense of superiority and control. When you engage with a narcissist, even in self-defense, you're giving them exactly what they want, your energy. Your reaction tells them they still matter. They still have power over you, and they can still control your emotional state. But when you go silent, something powerful begins to shift. You cut off the supply. You remove the stage they perform on. Without your response, they're left with nothing but themselves, and they hate that. Narcissists are internally hollow. They construct a false persona to mask deep insecurity and self-loathing. Your reaction helps sustain that persona. It keeps their delusions intact. But when you withdraw and stop feeding into their manipulations, that mask begins to crack. Silence is not the same as weakness or defeat. It's strategic. It's a choice. You're not walking away because you don't care. You're walking away because you do care about yourself. You're no longer willing to be emotionally hijacked. Narcissists don't know what to do with silence because it reflects back their own emptiness. It triggers panic, desperation, even rage. They'll try harder to get a response. They'll provoke, bait, and manipulate even more intensely. But if you remain silent, grounded, and unshaken, they start to unravel. Their power is not in who they are. It's in how much of your mind and emotions they can control. Take that away, and they're left powerless. This is why silence is not passive. It's incredibly active and powerful. It's the refusal to be pulled into chaos. It's a boundary that doesn't need to be shouted. It's you choosing to protect your peace. It's the beginning of you reclaiming your sense of self. When you stop giving them your energy, you force them to face the one thing they run from the most, themselves. You're no longer a mirror for their delusions. You become a wall they can't climb, a silence they can't manipulate, and a person they can no longer reach. Strategic silence is not about ignoring someone out of spite or avoiding confrontation out of fear. It's about making a conscious decision to protect your energy and regain control of your emotional space. When dealing with a narcissist, engaging in endless arguments, justifications, or emotional pleas is exactly what they want. They pull you into a cycle where they dominate the conversation, twist your words, and drain your mental and emotional strength. But when you choose silence with intention, you're not surrendering. You're stepping into your power. You're shifting the dynamic from reactive to proactive. You're saying, I don't owe you access to my peace. Choosing silence as a strategy requires emotional maturity and clarity. It means recognizing that not every battle needs to be fought. Narcissists thrive on emotional chaos, and when you remove your presence and your reactions from the equation, the chaos starts to collapse. You're not running. You're refusing to engage in a game that only exists to serve their ego. This kind of silence is firm, it's calm, it's grounded, and it communicates more than 1,000 words ever could. Strategic silence is a boundary. It tells the narcissist that the rules have changed. They can no longer bait you into defending yourself or seeking their validation. It's you stepping out of the role they assigned to you and reclaiming your identity on your own terms. And that move hits them where it hurts the most. Because control is everything to them, your silence says, you no longer have access to me. It's a shift in power, and they feel it immediately. When used intentionally, silence becomes a mirror that forces the narcissist to sit with their own reflection. No distractions, no scapegoats, just the reality they've worked so hard to avoid. This silence is not cold, it's empowering. It's not avoidance, it's elevation. You rise above the drama, and in doing so, you change the rules of the game entirely. It's no longer about who's right or who wins the argument. It's about who refuses to play in the first place. You stop reacting and start observing. You conserve your energy for healing, for growing, for reclaiming your life. And in that space of silence, you find strength you didn't even know you had. Narcissists don't fear confrontation. In fact, they often invite it. Conflict gives them the perfect opportunity to manipulate, twist narratives, and assert control. They know how to spin every word in their favor, how to shift blame, and how to turn your anger into their defense. Confrontation keeps the game alive. It keeps them relevant in your life. But what truly terrifies a narcissist is indifference. Indifference signals that they no longer hold any emotional weight in your world. It tells them they're no longer significant, that you've detached, that you've healed beyond the point of needing to explain or engage. Indifference is the emotional equivalent of being invisible to someone who once controlled the room. It strips away their illusion of power. Narcissists rely on the idea that they still matter, that they can still get a rise out of you, whether through love or rage. When you become indifferent, you're not hating them. You're not resenting them. You simply no longer care, and that is what they cannot tolerate. Hate still involves emotion. Indifference involves nothing. It is silence without pain, distance without conflict, and presence without reaction. This emotional neutrality is what breaks the narcissist's hold. Because as long as you feel emotionally invested, hurt, angry, confused, they still see a way back in. They still believe they can manipulate your boundaries, distort your truth, and regain control. But once you've reached indifference, there's no crack in the armor. You've shut the door, locked it, and thrown away the key. They are left knocking into a void with no one answering. To get to this place of indifference requires inner work. You have to process your pain, rebuild your confidence, and fully understand the manipulation you endured. It's not about pretending not to care, it's about actually no longer needing them to validate your feelings, your worth, or your truth. And when that happens, the narcissist loses the only tool they had, access to your emotions. Indifference is silence with strength. It doesn't require revenge, arguments, or explanations. It doesn't need proof or an audience. It's a deep, calm knowing that you are free, and nothing, no outburst, no apology, no false promise, can pull you back into the cycle, because you've outgrown it. You've risen above the need to react, and that's what dismantles everything they built. When you go silent in the face of a narcissist, it sends a message louder than words ever could. Narcissists are experts at dominating conversations, twisting facts, and controlling the emotional atmosphere. They rely on constant engagement to stay relevant and to keep their manipulative narrative alive. Your silence breaks that cycle. It's not just the absence of words. It's a declaration of independence. It tells the narcissist, "You no longer have access to my emotional world." That kind of silence is unsettling for them because it means they've lost control. Narcissists interpret silence not just as withdrawal, but as rejection of their influence. Your lack of response removes the mirror they use to define themselves. They can no longer see their power reflected in your reactions. They can't find validation in your anger or satisfaction in your pain. Silence says, "I see through the game, and I won't play anymore." It disrupts their sense of superiority, exposing the insecurity they try so desperately to hide. They may try harder to provoke you, send messages, make dramatic gestures, or even shift to victim mode. But the lack of response tells them clearly they no longer matter. This is what makes silence such a powerful weapon. It's not about winning an argument or getting the last word. It's about removing the narcissist from the equation entirely. You're not trying to change them or teach them a lesson. You're simply done. And that finality is terrifying to someone who depends on your emotional engagement to feel significant. Silence communicates emotional closure. It's a boundary they cannot cross. It's you stepping away from the performance, leaving them on a stage with no audience. The narcissist will often perceive your silence as defiance or betrayal because it strips them of their perceived dominance. But in truth, your silence is healing. It's you choosing peace over chaos, dignity over drama, and clarity over confusion. You no longer feel compelled to defend yourself, justify your choices, or explain your worth. That absence of justification signals massive internal growth. It shows you've shifted the focus back to yourself, where it belongs. Your energy is no longer entangled in their manipulations. It's centered, grounded, and directed inward, where true power lives. That quiet separation is what delivers the most powerful message of all. When you go silent, you're not just ignoring the narcissist. You're disrupting their entire manipulation game. Narcissists operate through a cycle of control, validation, and emotional dependency. They create confusion, provoke reactions, and draw you into endless arguments or guilt trips, all designed to keep you emotionally hooked. But the moment you stop playing along, the structure they've built begins to collapse. Silence isn't just non-engagement. It's the refusal to be a character in their false reality. It's the moment the script gets thrown out and they have nothing left to act on. The manipulation game relies on your responses. It depends on you feeling the need to explain yourself, defend your boundaries, or seek their approval. Every time you do, they win a small victory. They pull you back in, even if it's through conflict. That's how they stay in control. But silence removes their ability to read you, to analyze your emotions, and to plot their next move. You're no longer giving them emotional fuel, which means they're stuck with themselves. And they hate that more than anything. Without your reactions, they're left scrambling for control. They might ramp up the manipulation, trying new tactics to provoke you, playing victim, spreading rumors, love bombing, or even threatening behavior. But if you stay grounded and silent, their efforts become increasingly desperate and ineffective. The game becomes one-sided. They're making moves, but you're no longer on the board, and that's when the game begins to break down completely. Your silence creates confusion for them because it removes predictability. Narcissists thrive on patterns. They know how to push buttons and get results. When those patterns are broken, their confidence begins to crack. They don't know how to respond to someone they can't control. They may accuse you of being cruel or cold, but deep down, they know what your silence means. You've seen through the game, and you've chosen not to play. This shift in dynamic puts the power back in your hands. You're no longer reacting. You're observing. You're no longer emotionally invested in proving anything. And that is a powerful disruption to their entire strategy. The narcissist no longer feels significant in your world, and that truth, delivered silently, is the ultimate breakdown of their control system. The silent move is more than a tactic. It's a turning point, the beginning of your emotional freedom and healing. When you finally decide to stop engaging with a narcissist, you're not just protecting yourself from further harm, you're reclaiming your life. That silence is the space where recovery begins. For so long, your energy has been drained by chaos, manipulation, and the constant need to prove your worth. But when you step back and choose silence, you're also choosing peace, clarity, and self-respect. It's in that quiet space that you begin to reconnect with yourself, to hear your own thoughts again, and to remember who you were before the distortion of the narcissist took hold. Healing after narcissistic abuse isn't loud. It doesn't happen in confrontation or closure, seeking conversations. It happens in silence, in solitude, in those moments where you no longer feel the urge to explain yourself to someone who never listened in the first place. That's when you start to see how strong you really are. You begin to understand that your silence wasn't avoidance. It was a boundary. It was you finally saying, I matter more than this battle. As the noise fades, you make space to rebuild what the narcissist tried to erase. Your confidence, your joy, your sense of reality. You begin to trust your intuition again. You start to see clearly without the fog of gaslighting. In that silence, you begin to listen to your needs and desires without filtering them through someone else's expectations or manipulations. You realize you're not broken. You were just entangled in someone else's sickness. Every moment you remain silent and disengaged is a moment you invest in your own growth. It's a moment where you reaffirm your decision to choose yourself over the toxic cycle. You begin to prioritize your well-being, your dreams, and your values. The energy you once poured into surviving the narcissist now gets poured into becoming your highest self. This is the transformation the narcissist never saw coming, because they never believed you'd find the strength to walk away and stay gone. The silent move doesn't just remove the narcissist from your life. It invites healing into it. It marks the shift from survival to freedom, from confusion to clarity, and from being controlled to being completely, unshakably in control of your own path.